Chris, thank you so much for joining today. Would you mind just getting us going by giving us a quick overview of who you are?
My name's Chris Mosley. I am the owner of Mutant Metals, LLC. It's a small manufacturing company, make strength training equipment focused around home gym users. I got into lifting probably when I was about 14 years old. Didn't really know what I was doing. Went to local gyms, stuff like that. Got into powerlifting a few years after that when I was around 17. And me and my lifting buddy just lifted in commercial gyms until a few years ago. And it just kind of got to the point where commercial gyms were overcrowded. It sucked having to wait for machines all the time and people leaving plates on equipment and not having the right equipment. We were using an old York Olympic bar to do 650 pound squats on, and
right,
it's just wasn't working real well. So, and then we went into the stage of being those guys that carried their own barbell into the gym, and
got it.
So we decided to, I bought a house and it had a small 1.5 car garage. So, we started with a deadlift platform, some weights, it was a bar, some plates I got off of, I think I picked them up off of Craigslist for like 40 cents a pound when you could still do that. And, some small dumbbells, stuff like that. And then it got to the point, where we needed a squat rack, but, squat racks were a decent one, your minimum, around $1,000, for the big Rogue, whatever,
Right.
And that's kind of what led me into starting making equipment. It started with that squat rack, really was, me and my stepdad I bought some steel. He works for a fabrication company that does, they make like feeder bowls and certain equipment for, industrial applications. But, we went up there and 10 hours of drilling holes into some steel tubing and some welding. We finally came up with a squat rack. And that's the one, if you're ever on like my personal Instagram page, you'll see that it's still the same squat rack. That's kind of what started into the idea of making my own equipment.
Yeah. So that's just so we're clear. I believe it's just it looks like a standard rack. Is it 3x3 and 1-inch holes?
3x3, 1-inch holes. It was actually, it was supposed to emulate like a Rogue Monster Series rack. Just no holes in the side or anything like that. Tops were just regular C-channel, nothing fancy. And then my great uncle actually ended up passing away a little bit after I made that rack, and he was real into, he was a machinist, and, he made a lot of stuff at home. He had a welder and a lathe, a small bandsaw, and I ended up buying all that from my cousin, and started to get into machining, and I already had welding experience from my previous job in the foundry. And, I started with, that was all I started with was, $400 for a lathe, a welder, which was a good deal. But, and just started making stuff for my own gym. It was
cool.
Little stuff like handles and for dumbbells and, adapters for certain things. And I got into 3D printing for making small components, and it all just kind of built on each other.
Sure.
And
what year was this?
This would have been, let me think. This would have been like the end of 2017 going into 2018.
Okay.
I had no machining experience. I had manufacturing experience, but kind of a totally different realm of things. I worked in an alloys manufacturing facility. We did metallurgy and made custom metals for different companies, to spec. But I started getting, I I'd get guys here and there that would ask me to make stuff for them. They'd see me that I made stuff on Instagram or, Facebook or whatever. And I'd get messages about, can you make me this little handle? Can you make me this adapter? I had, I did some pieces for Joe Gray over at, the guy behind Home Gym Competition. And he was actually kind of my first real customer. And that was still when it was just under my name. It wasn't the company yet. I didn't even really think about starting a company yet. And I actually didn't even get into even thinking about a company until I had a guy message me on Facebook. Well, actually, I messaged him. He was selling a piece of equipment. In the background, I saw an Elite FPS safety squat bar. And I asked him, I'm not interested in the rack you're selling or whatever, but, are you getting rid of the bar too? And it wasn't getting rid of the bar, but we got to talking and he asked me to make him a couple pieces. And he didn't give me a lot of specifics other than he wanted a reverse hyper that could be mounted onto his squat rack somehow. And he needed a dip attachment for him and his kids to make. For him and his kids to lift with. His kids did baseball, younger kids, and he had this tiny basement gym. I mean, it was 10 foot by maybe 7 foot with, 7 foot ceilings or something like that. So that's kind of what started the whole thought process of, why I'm making this equipment, starting to consider, the environment stuff's going to be in. What's going to be different about it because it's in a small space in a home gym. And I made them that reverse hyper that mounted into the safety pins, and I made the dip attachment. And the dip attachment was the first thing that I ever really got a lot of attention on. It was this small single pin mounted, had only 2 different settings on it. It wasn't very good, to be honest. The knurling on it was kind of rough on the handles. The tolerances on everything weren't great. It didn't have UHMW. It was just made to function, and that's it. There wasn't nothing fancy about it other than that you could move the handles in 2 different positions, and they were knurled, and the handles were stainless. And actually, your page is one of the ones that, when that all happened, I believe you actually shared the original prototype, which is the one that I made for him. It was a small red unit. And after that, I ended up getting, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 messages about, hey, can you make me one of these?
Cool.
But I want UHMW. I want to be able to do this color. And then I kind of had to step back a little bit because I was working a full-time job in, in the foundry, 50, 60, 70 hours a week sometimes,
Yeah.
And I was just doing this on the side just as a hobby, really. But, at that time I just got out of school. I left the foundry to go back to school. I went to be a physical therapist assistant to eventually become, a physical therapist through like a transfer program. I got out of school, and the reason why I didn't continue to become a physical therapist was because I just really didn't like the way the insurance system was set up in physical therapy. People weren't really getting the help that they needed. And if they didn't adhere to their home programs, you only had them a couple hours a week. It's not enough time to really get people where they need to go. And if someone's having issues, doesn't have the resources to, perform a exercise program at home or in a facility or whatever, they just didn't make progress. And I saw a lot of people kind of go to the wayside because of that. And it really made me lose interest in the whole idea of becoming a physical therapist, because I just didn't want to be in this system that, it just wasn't right. I wasn't comfortable with, I liked the idea of helping people, but I didn't like to be so constrained in doing so. So, and not only that, but I was going to start working as a PTA, and there just weren't that many job options. I would have had to take a pay cut from what I was already making. So I returned to the foundry, and, I did everything there. I ran induction furnaces, did metallurgical analysis, maintenance on equipment. We built things. Because when I started at that company, it was a startup company itself. So I kind of grew with that company as it started up, and kind of seen all the things that it took to get to a certain level of capability,
Mm-hmm.
But it was a dirty job. I was working long hours. I didn't really see my family a lot. And when I did, I was so physically and mentally drained that it was just, I wasn't really present with my kids, my wife, and, you come home irritable, and you just want to chill out and watch TV and go to bed and do it all over again. This rat race of just same thing over and over again. You're living for the weekends, and, which was fine. I was paying my bills, but, I was waking up every day just, feeling like shit, really. I mean, just not really, no one wants to go to work, but I mean, just really hating the way that everything was playing out, where I was at with being able to, be with my family and, have money to do things. And that was another big driver too, was, I was working all these hours, and it still just wasn't enough. That's why I started doing side work, making small pieces of equipment. And that kind of led to one day where I was standing there, and we were doing this particularly difficult melt in the furnace, and everybody was irritated, and, it was a long day. And it was the day after you had shared it on your page, and a couple other of the bigger pages shared it. And I was sitting there, and I started writing down on a piece of paper, like, if I were to build 6 of these, how much money could I make off of that? Would that be enough to carry me on to the next couple weeks or whatever? Mm-hmm. And then I figured out, well, I could start with 6 and then make 10 and then maybe make 15. And then I could pay my bills for this month and the next month, so that's kind of what I started doing. And, a week later, I quit my job.
Wow.
And decided to just kind of jump into it, because I realized that to make this stuff, it's one thing to see this stuff, even to have one of the units, and you're looking at it, it's hard to know, unless you have some experience in that area, what kind of work goes into taking that from a raw material all the way to getting it to the customer. And, to be honest, I didn't know a lot about all of that, all the small intricacies of, shipping and manufacturing, and what do you do if you can't get material, and, working on sourcing, and just a lot of those small issues that had to kind of just fight through, But yeah, I ended up starting the company officially November 1st in 2020. And that was really with the dip attachment is what really kind of started everything.
Gotcha. So do you remember how long that first dip attachment before you started selling it took you to make?
The first actual ones, I mean, it would take me, I don't know, 2 or 3 days to make one of them. Because you'd have to, and the part of that problem was I wasn't doing this full time yet. But yeah, right. You have to cut the steel, you have to bevel and clean all your weld edges, or drill holes by hand, because my shop's right now it's the same shop. It's about 800 square feet. Almost everything is done by hand. All the holes are drilled by hand. All the machining is manual machining, with the exception now. I have access to a CNC mill with a local machining company that we work with. The way that we manufacture stuff now is just, it's mainly because of the limited amount of equipment that we have and space and, access to certain things.
Gotcha.
But now we could, we can do 20 of them in a couple days. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I'd be curious to hear just like what were those first few months like?
Actually, the first few months weren't bad because the volume just wasn't that high. There wasn't that much to think about. It was, I have to make these 15, 20 dip attachments, and this is when I have to get this amount of material. You could keep track of everything on a notebook. It wasn't until, I'd say 6 or 7 months in when stuff started really getting a little crazy. Volume was picking up. It was getting real tough to know how to scale properly without getting too far behind in production. And, because we make everything to order. And that's just because we really couldn't do it any other way. There was no investors that were purchasing equipment. I didn't have the financial background to be able to take out, a $50,000, $100,000 loan to start a manufacturing company. So it was just a matter of working with what we had at the time. Once we hit like the 6-7 month mark, that's when things started to get a little more difficult. You're trying to manage all these small things. You're managing sales, you're managing materials, you're managing manufacturing, managing, a website, which didn't come until a little bit later, customer service, just all the little things that come with, starting a business. And then it's actually, it's almost like it's 3 or 4 businesses stacked on top of each other because you're trying to compartmentalize shipping and manufacturing and product development and just a lot of little things that ended up being tougher than I would have thought.
Yeah. I mean, I'm familiar. What about, so when you first started, so you went full time, you started taking orders, was for like the first 6 months, it was all just like people messaging you and you worked with them kind of one-on-one to figure that out?
It was mostly through Instagram and through Facebook. People would message me, pay through PayPal, take a manual order, had manual spreadsheets. And then that evolved into, getting the website up, which is still the same website. It's just a Squarespace page.
Yeah.
And, integrating that into, like a website-based shipping service. And that's still what I use now.
Cool. What about how long until you created your second product?
Well, I guess it would depend on what you really consider the second product, because I did some smaller things like wrist rollers and lever hammers and things that people kind of requested me to build them. But the second big product wouldn't be until there's the handles. I make like a 1 inch and 5/8 single post handle for jammer arms or whatever you want to use them for.
Yep.
And then the snapback rollers monolith like attachment. Yeah. And that was about a year after that. But the development of the snapback started almost immediately after the dip attachment. That was a project I was working on with somebody that had requested me to make a set of monolith attachments that had a roller in the catch, and just kind of evolved into what you see now in that product.
Was that a thing at all? Like, was there anybody else making something like that?
There was a company that was making a spring-loaded monolith attachment at the time that used a single spring, but it didn't have rollers, and it attached kind of inconveniently. I'm not sure on just the roller aspect. I think there is one other overseas company that was making something with a roller on it before I was. but there was nothing that really combined all those elements into it and then added things like, full UHMW protection and being able to do custom colors and, the mag pins in the back. And the big thing to me too with that product was there were spring loaded options out there, but all of them seemed to use this single linear spring that attached from the mount of the bracket of the piece to the swing arm. And my big issue with that, I was always worried about, if that spring fails, what keeps that swing arm from just coming back into your bar path, And that's why I kind of went away from the single spring idea. And, I tried all different kinds of things. I tried rubber bands. I tried different types of counterweights because I wanted to remove that huge hockey stick counterweight. It made everything harder to ship. It made it heavier. I mean, it made it more expensive to ship. And, it's real inconvenient when you're trying to lift and you walk around your rack and smack your forehead on on one of the hockey sticks sticking out. So that's what led to, it came from grabbing a doorknob one day and kind of pulling it out and letting it go. And that torsion spring action in that doorknob kind of gave me the idea of, well, if we could put that, almost like a mouse trap up into the mount, I should be able to use two on each side and make them strong enough so that if one failed, the other one was still strong enough to keep the catch out from the bar path. And I know that's not something a lot of people think about with that. And I'm not even sure that I've really asked that heavy, but that was the big motivator for why that came out the way it did.
That's crazy. And those monolith rollers are awesome. Very, very, very cool. So we've touched on those, the ultimate dip attachment. You've mentioned some handles. What else do you currently sell?
Those are the big ones. I also sell solid stainless steel dumbbell handles. They're just a regular plate-loaded Olympic dumbbell handle with a thick handle. I've done them in custom sizes too, and some small things like 3D printed knobs that have nuts embedded into them. But that's not really anything new. There's quite a few people that do something like that. But
gotcha. And does most of the product inspiration come from like people requesting things?
I mean, the dip attachment, that came from, like the story I told you with him wanting dip attachment built for him and his kids, having to have that be adaptable to him and his younger children. So that's where the width changes came into play. The snapback rollers were a request by a customer, and then I just kind of made them if I was using them myself, how I would want them to function. Right. And that's where that came from. I have a lot of other product ideas that are, in my notebook that, some of the inspiration for those just comes from, watching Instagram videos and seeing what people are doing and how they're lifting in their home gyms. And sorry, you might hear my dogs.
That's all right.
But, there's most of it is just that, just kind of seeing what people are talking about, what people are using, thinking about issues I have in my own home gym, and just developing it from there, how I would want it to be when I use it, and what qualities I'd be looking for.
Got it. So it all does pretty much relate to like either an issue or just a product feature that somebody is looking for, and then you basically using your experience in the home gym, creativity to create what that solution is.
Yeah, it's just trying to solve as many problems as possible while making the piece function in as many environments as it can. Yeah. Gotcha. Adapting different racks, using things like stainless steel so it doesn't rust, UHMW to protect racks so they don't get marked up and start rusting, things like that.
Gotcha. Do you have any product failure stories?
Not really. I've had ideas that I've developed, and then you get to the end and you start using it in the gym or whatever, and it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out. You know, I had some different systems for securing handles and stuff like that I spent like a lot of time on, and then gets to the end and it's like, this is really inconvenient to use it this way. So, you know, there's stuff that you don't really see ahead of time until you get it in the gym, start using it, you know, having other people use it, look at it, give you feedback. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
The stuff that I sell now, not really, just mainly ideas that didn't work out.
Got it. Would you say you kind of just start tinkering with it and figure out like, oh, this isn't going to work? Or...
Oh yeah. I mean, the snapback rollers, the design that you see now actually was probably the 5th or 6th iteration of that. And even then there was even smaller increments of adjustment in between that. And it could probably still be improved really. I mean, I'm working on ways of trying to increase, you know, like the clearance and making the rollers function better and, you know, little things like that. But
yeah. What about so you mentioned earlier, like some of the issues or just some of the like difficulties in starting a business, like those first 6 months, there's a lot of things that you just have to do and figure out on your own. What about today? What are some of the most difficult things about running a business? I should say your specific type of business today.
I would say specifically it's well, I mean, there's a bunch of different issues with trying to scale a business, you know, and the other big issue was in the beginning, I really didn't know anything about what kind of margins I should be looking for, you know, where to price things so it made the most sense. I would say scaling is still probably the number one issue. You know, the shop's small. We're not really at the point where we could just go into a building or something yet. The other big issue I would say is just trying to keep lead times down. You know, when we're making stuff to order, it's really easy to get behind when we're running. You know, I have 2 lathes, a couple welders, you know, grinders and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, the lathes we're running are all pre-1975. So if a machine goes down, you know, I have to repair it. You know, there's no company I'm calling to come out and do the maintenance and fix it. And, you know, we've had to make parts for them. We've had to develop different manufacturing techniques because of just the limited equipment that we have. And I have more stuff that I'm working on now, like how to speed the threading process up and how to reduce post-processing and welding, how to reduce like manufacturing complexity with like the dip attachment and the snapback rollers are just way overcomplicated from a manufacturing standpoint. You know, anybody I've ever shown those to that is in manufacturing, you know, just kind of, they're asking you like, what were you thinking when you sat down and you thought about, you know, how you were going to make this? Yeah. And it all just came from what tools we had to work with, what materials we had to work with at the time. So that stuff will likely evolve here pretty soon as I get, you know, I'm building relationships with other manufacturers, with manufacturers that have capabilities to do things like more complex bending and cutting, laser cutting, things like that. That's really going to open up how I do things.
Gotcha. So let's just say you figure out the scaling, you figure out how to scale. Where do you see this company in 5 years?
Probably, I mean, just kind of playing out all the ideas that I have in the works now that build off of like modular systems and like I have some projects now that use my handles. So combine like a standard 1/8 thread that's on the handles to be able to switch handles quickly to buy one piece of equipment. And then instead of having to contact someone like me to make special thickness handles, you could just drop new ones in, take them out. I definitely want to get kind of more involved with the community as a whole. I've been trying to do that, but with time constraints, it's just really tough to go out and actually, talk
Sure.
with people a lot and really integrate. But because there's a lot of different things out there. There's a lot of people that just have different goals and different ways of going about things. And, I'm sure there's tons of things that could be made to solve problems that I don't even know about. A lot of the stuff that I'm looking at comes from powerlifting or general fitness stuff, or, when I did a short stint of boxing when I was a teenager, that's kind of the lens that I'm viewing things through. So it's real valuable to get out and talk to people about what they're looking for and how they would prefer something to operate. I just wish I had more time to do that, but I'm hoping to kind of build the company around. I'd like to hire, some more people once we get into a good location that I could do that in, not only to speed things up, but to open up, different opportunities with how many products we could offer and options we could offer.
Yeah, and that makes sense. What about what is how many, is it just you, or are there more employees right now?
It is me and a helper, and we operate basically everything outside of some machining is done by a local shop that I work with, like the CNC machining, some of the handle threading, and then the powder coating is done by a local custom bike shop. They do all of our coatings, powder coating and Cerakoting.
Cool. So what does your typical day to day look like?
I usually wake up around 4:45 to 5:30, depending on what the next day is going to be. As I'm getting ready to go to work, I'm usually answering emails, answering messages on social media platforms, come down to the shop, start with my production schedule for that day, hope nothing breaks down, take a break. While I'm on a break, I'm usually answering messages. So, there's certain times where I'm a lot more responsive than others, and then kind of just working until later on in the day to whenever we get enough done that we could, stop, and then, just go spend time with my family, or all the other things going on.
Gotcha. So if I'm what do your lead times look like right now?
Right now I'm quoting everything at like 12 weeks, which is, it's a long time. I don't like them to be that long. A lot of orders are even taking longer than that, and a lot of that's just surrounded by just the difficulties and things like I talked about. Like, if we have a machine go down, if I had the lathe go down and it's a part that we have to make, or I have to tear the machine apart or something like that, we're down 4 days. It's really like being down 8 days, because now everything that I would be doing is being taken over by my helper, and we lose so much time in little things like that. Equipment breaking down. I don't want to make excuses for why the lead times are long, but I'm definitely working on trying to get those down. And a lot of that is going to come in with reducing the manufacturing complexity of the products, because there's just so many little steps with everything. A lot of weld seams, a lot of drilling holes, and a lot of machining time that just sucks up a whole bunch of time. And when little things go wrong, it translates into lost time, and lead times get extended. So definitely not something I want to do forever. I'd love to be able to get to a point where we pre-make a lot of things and then just do the customization stuff afterwards. And we are taking steps to move towards that.
Gotcha. I mean, it makes sense as a small new company, especially with the amount of custom work that's needed, or the uniqueness of your products. I'd be curious to hear if you get a lot of complaints about that. Like, if they order, are customers typically patient, or are they difficult to deal with?
The vast majority of them have actually been really great because most of my customers are coming from Instagram or coming from Facebook, where they kind of seen where it started from, and they can. I think that they're seeing that we're taking steps to try to, improve things. They see finishes and stuff improve on products, and so I appreciate that a lot when most guys just kind of they get what's going on. And I have had some pretty gnarly emails in the past, from people that probably found us just through a Google search or something like that, and that could be really stressful, because a lot of the people that I interact with, if you're getting an email from Mutant Metals, 99% of the time that email is coming directly from me. So it's hard not to be on a more personal level with most of my customers. And then when you get that really upset customer that comes in, that could really take a day off of you,
Interesting. Yeah. It's good to know that, like, those people that find you on Instagram or Facebook or whatever most likely are know what they're getting into. But if they find you off Google, then you just never know, I'm guessing. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of different personalities out there as far as what they expect. And, I'd be upset too if I ordered something with a 10-week lead time and it couldn't show up until week 14 or something. I get it. So I try to be understanding with most people, and, I hope that they're, understanding with us, but definitely try to improve, lead times and getting lead times down. And,
Gotcha. I've mentioned, like, you have unique products. What are your feelings when you see, like, maybe an overseas company that has a similar product that's coming to the market that looks pretty close to yours? Is that something where it's like you take it personal, or you see it?
I mean, whether it's overseas or it's American company or whatever, I kind of already expected that people are going to come after some of the things that I make, if they turn out good, because, I'm not a very large company. So, people just are going to kind of figure that they have more leverage than you do. And if it's an overseas company, even if I have patents on everything, there's not really a way to really enforce them. Even international patents. Someone goes to a manufacturer in China, it's going to be real tough to, fight anything like that. So I've just kind of accepted it as something that's going to happen, and just kind of stay in my own lane and try not to step on other people's toes as much as possible. And then, if someone's going to come and they're going to copy something, then it's just up to me to make that product, better, less expensive, more features, something, just constantly trying to hide behind, like, patent numbers. And, I get why companies do it, because it helps with your longevity. It helps deter people from doing that. And it helps you, like, in your local market, like, in the US, where you could actually enforce those things. But at the end of the day, it's just, it's a weightlifting equipment. There's only so much you can do to protect, a swing arm. There's only so much you could do to protect a handle, or a mount, or, I think we've seen that with, like, the reverse hyper. How many companies have made a reverse hyper, and how many patents did Westside get on, that Louis got on the reverse hyper design. So, it's unfortunate, and I'd be lying if I say I'm not initially a little bit upset when I see it happen. But what are you going to do about it?
Right. Cool. Yeah, I think that, just from being observer, I think that's the right mindset to have. But, last thing I have here is just you create a very premium product, and there's a lot of people just, like, online that you probably see this all the time. Like, why is this so expensive? So what do you typically say to responses like that, or customers that just simply say, I'm never going to get that. It's way too expensive.
I don't usually like argue with people about that because value is it's so subjective, and what I considered valuable, as a teenager, I don't consider valuable now. My customers are usually people that they want something that is maybe unique or made in America or made by hand, or they want a specific color, they want it to fit this rack that, those are the majority of my customers. So, I mean, I'm not going to compete with companies like Titan or, any of these other companies that can produce things in mass volumes or making things overseas, or it's just not the market I'm going for. So,
Right.
I try to keep prices as fair as possible, for the materials we use, because it's a lot of, I use stainless steel for a lot of things, like our mount pins for like the dip attachment and the snapback rollers are stainless steel because it's a wear part. It's going in and out of rack holes. I use stainless on various components, and stainless is just expensive.
Yeah.
And not to mention through 2021, my stainless prices increased by about 2.5 times, and my regular steel prices almost tripled. So, and I didn't raise prices that much. The snapback rollers, I ended up having to bite the bullet and raise the price quite substantially on those because they just got way too expensive to produce. And I addressed that a little bit on Instagram and on Facebook about, trying to reduce some of the complexity of that product, get the manufacturing cost down a little bit so I could engineer something that may be a little cheaper that still has the same function and same options. And, a lot of that just comes down to solving the engineering problem. But, I mean, if I completely get looking at a dip attachment and looking at a ship price of like $400 some and going, it's just a dip attachment. Why would I spend that much money on it? But, if you go into some of the same forums that these guys are on and look at what people are saying, I mean, you're going to get a dip attachment that doesn't shake. It fits your rack tight. The handles are knurled, so you have a little more control over the movement. Not a huge deal on dips, but that's not really why the handles were knurled. It was more so when the handles are removed and able to be used in a rack or something like that, they could be used for various purposes. But you could change grips. You could change your widths. The whole thing is made out of North American steel, and it's made by hand. So, and there's a lot of work that goes into them with welding, post-processing. We don't do the coating in-house, so that's expensive. So I try to keep pricing as fair as possible, but it is going to be more of a premium price line. I don't really want to be seen so much as a premium brand per se. I know that's kind of how I'm viewed now. I want to pack as much value into that price point as I can. If the product is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and it's made from the materials it's made out of, I take all that into account when pricing. I'm just trying to, support my family. I'm not really trying to, buy a lake house somewhere or something. I'm just trying to make the stuff that I want to make, and not be miserable every day going to work.
Yeah, all of that makes sense to me. It's cool to hear. I did think of one other question. And first of all, no worries if you want to build a lake house. That's what you should be able to do if you're successful.
I mean, down the road, yeah, but I mean, it's not all just super motivated by money. Yes. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it's still a business. I still have to make money, or the business fails, or I can't pay my employee or employees, I still have to make money at the end of the day, but I'm not trying to gouge people. The price is what it is because it has to be, really.
Right. And I didn't mean, like, when I said premium, I didn't necessarily mean like bougie, right? Because obviously if if you have a lead time like it is, people do feel like the value of what you're producing is very high. You know, it is more premium to what most of the stuff that's out there.
Right.
But one more question. So you just you started tinkering with this stuff, you made a product, and then you just went all in, quit your job, you went all in. I'd be curious to hear just knowing the types of people that are listening to this sort of podcast, like what advice would you give to somebody who was in a similar situation? Like just as they consider it, and it could be like, don't do this. It's like, it's very, very hard. So yeah, just be curious to hear what advice would you have?
See, the thing is, when I started it, I kind of came at it from the thought process of, I'm working this job that I don't really like. I'm not fulfilled by it. At all. I'm not getting time with my family. One day my daughter's going to come to me, asking for help to pay for her wedding, and I'm going to have to tell her no. Something's going to happen in my family, and I'm not going to have the leverage to do anything about it. And all these things just kind of built on each other and was a major source of anxiety for me. And, anxiety, depression, that stuff ran in my family. And if you let it kind of get away from you, it really takes grip of you hard. So, I wasn't, so I wasn't just looking at this from a standpoint of I want to start a business because I just want to be the boss or whatever, and I want to do whatever I want. I just really want to run a business. It was more of I don't really see the third option. It was either stay at work or go try to build a career in physical therapy. The third option was do something else. And if I didn't, my wife's disabled, so she can't work. I have 2 kids that are 4 and 14. It's more of approaching it from, and that's why I dived in the way that I did. I had to, I had to go at it, because if I gave myself the out option, it's the whole burning the boats thing. So you land on the new land. If you have the option to go back, when things get tough, you might take that option. So you burn the boats, but if someone else is looking to do this, I would tell them first, you got to really think about why you're looking to do it. If you're looking to just make money, that's going to get real old real fast. The burnout's going to be serious. I have it myself at times, where you're sitting there questioning, like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? If your only motivator there is money, then it's going to be rough. If it's not something that you could really wrap your head around and sink your teeth into, and it feels good at the end of the day when you're done doing it, it's just going to be tough. And not only that, you just have to weigh your options. Are you, is this a money thing? Is this am I doing this for some kind of status or something? Or, I think those things are going to make things tough, but everything else is so circumstantial. It's hard to give anybody any real advice on what they should and shouldn't do. I think a lot of people probably shouldn't own businesses because it will tear you up hard. There's been really down days where, equipment's broken, you're behind, you have emails coming in where people are just tearing you to shreds about certain things, and a supplier calls you and says, hey, we can't get tubing for 4 weeks. We can't get stainless bar for 5 weeks. We can't get this for, and just trying to constantly put out fires. And so there's all those things that make it tough, but then there's that sense of pure freedom with it that you really don't get with anything else. You know, I still have to work in the confines of what I need to get done and by what time it needs to get done. And I mean, there's that. It's still work no matter what, but you have this certain amount of freedom where you really are the one that's carrying the torch while you're just trying to find your way through everything. And, you know, it's your decision whether to turn right or left, and all the consequences that come with that, good or bad. You know, it's you. You know, it comes down to you. So if you're okay with that, if you could take ultimate responsibility for everything and the equation makes sense to you, then yeah, do it. But if your motivators are really just more shallow things, I think you're going to have a really hard time doing something like that, because it's going to be really hard regardless. So you got to have something that kind of carries you through it.
Well said. All right, man. Well, awesome chat. Before we go, you mentioned on Instagram and Facebook, but would you mind just letting the listeners know the best place to find you?
Website's real easy, just mutantmetals.com. Instagram is definitely where I'm most active if you want to see things like updates, production updates, things on maybe new products coming out. Instagram's definitely going to be the best place to keep track of us at. If you just search Mutant Metals, you'll find us. It's mutant_metals. I believe it's all lowercase. Instagram or Facebook, you'll find us. Same thing. Just search Mutant Metals, and pretty much all the stuff that I do on Instagram crosses over to Facebook. So either one of those is fine. I am looking at expanding to other platforms whenever I have the time resources to do so. But yeah, those are the best ways. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can message on Instagram, Facebook, email at mutantmetals@gmail.com. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, thanks again, Chris, for hopping on. Great chat. That's going to do it.
All right, man. Thanks. Appreciate it.